It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm Cecilia Sepp, your host. Welcome to Season 7. This week, in a change of pace, we're inviting back 3 returning guests. It's the Kavanagh family, Owen Kavanagh, Wendy Kavanagh, and Damian Kavanagh. They are all in the biz. They are here to talk about association management as the family business. It's June 30th, 2025. Welcome to episode 291. Hey everybody, it's Monday, June 30th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting, and I'm so glad you're here with us this week. We have a whole batch of returning guests, which I will get to in a moment. But I want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience, wherever you may be. And if you haven't had a moment yet to subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast service, please take a moment and do that, because 2025 has been a fantastic year so far of really cool conversations. You don't want to miss any of these, especially this one this week. But I would like to introduce the Kavanaghs. And they will each individually introduce themselves. They've all been on the podcast before. What brings them back this week is this. They are a family who are all in association management, and we just don't see that very often. So Wendy and I put our heads together and said, hey, we should do the Kavanagh Trifecta. So they're all back. They've all shared their advice, insights, and wisdom with us in the past. And today they're going to talk about what is it like to be a whole family in association management in the same city, in the same state. So we're going to go in the order of appearance on previous episodes. So we're going to start with Owen. Owen, welcome back. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back. My name is Owen Kavanagh. I serve as an events coordinator for the Atlanta Apartment Association and the Georgia Apartment Association. And I also have my own consulting firm, Kavanagh Solutions, for more AI solutions for association issues.
Ooh, that's interesting. We have to dig into that because I understand you have some different viewpoints on AI than your dad does. So let's go over to Wendy. Wendy, great seeing you again. Haven't seen you since the GSAE meeting.
This is true. Wendy Kavanagh. I am the president CEO of the National Protein and Food Distributors Association. I started that job in March after being with GSAE for 20 years.
Wow. And that's another podcast topic, I'm sure, going from one place to another. So, and Damian, last but not least, also expert in the language of Latin. So would you like to say hello and tell us a little about what you do?
Hello, everybody. Yes. I had a wonderful career in teaching and being an administrator in schools, in independent schools, teaching Latin and ancient history and coaching lacrosse before moving over to association work. First with a regional accrediting group called SAIS, Southern Association of Independent Schools, and now as the executive director, president, and CEO of MISBO, which works with schools from around the country, primarily the Southeast, on issues of long-term sustainability and operations and business and operations in schools, and a great, wonderful, wonderful place to be. I do get asked what MISBO stands for, and I've got a whole video on that. If you want to, we can do that another time.
Okay, that sounds great. So, well, Damian, since we're talking with you, you mentioned you were a teacher before you got into association management. So what drew you over to work in associations?
I think the thing, and this might be a theme that gets followed here, is Wendy dragged me over into associations. That's probably the most accurate way to think about it. When I was in school, teaching in school and being an administrator, I was part of a couple of associations as just as a member. But one of the things that I did, I moved from coaching and helping to organized lacrosse in the state of Georgia, which was a novel sport for the state and high schools, and so I had a lot to do with organizing the coaches quasi association when we had to get together for scheduling meetings, and then I stopped coaching and moved over to officiating to reffing lacrosse, and helped to found a very robust association. And we relied on Wendy and GSAE for bylaws. I mean, for all the things that you rely on your SAE and the professionals for. And we wound up. I was there at the beginning to be able to set it up and to help set it up as a real association. So that was maybe my first deep dive into being an association exec. The smallest, I mean, it's not actually that small of an association, but still volunteer run, completely volunteer run. I ran it as if we were our own AMC. And that was a remarkable experience. When I eventually got into association work full time, it was with one of the associations that I've been a member of and a volunteer with for a long time. But it felt like a very natural. It was a very natural slide into it, and I'm positive it wouldn't have happened. That career change wouldn't have happened from being in industry to being in the association without seeing Wendy do that, and having the ability to have a lot of great porch conversations about how in the world are we supposed to do this.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Well, so let's go over to Wendy then. So
Sure.
Wendy, do you feel like you did have an undue influence on Damian coming into associations?
Yes and no. Again, Damian is very specialized within that education association and the accrediting, and so it was his experience drew off that 15 years of being an administrator and a teacher. And whereas my association career was pretty varied. I mean, industrial engineers and financial planners and more financial planners and a banking group. And really my path was coming up through the communications membership side. Whereas Damian's was really focused in that accreditation and making schools better, whether it was the governance or the teaching and faculty and staff issues. And so we came at it from pretty different angles, even though we both ended up in a CEO role. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
undue influence is such a strong statement.
Okay, well, I'm teasing a little bit, but we do see by example. And I am also in a marriage with somebody who's in nonprofit management. My husband's the chief staff executive at the National Taxpayers Union, so he gets lots of free consulting advice at home. So, I don't know if I have any undue influence on him, but I'm often giving him advice if he asks for it or not. So it's
and again, Damian mentioning our porch conversations, it really is true. And over the years, there have been a lot of members that I'm either on my porch with or on the phone with, talking through an issue and bouncing ideas back and forth. I think that, again, because Damian and I come at it from such different angles, that we really are stronger CEOs because we're bouncing those ideas off and saying, well, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about the process behind it? And so that's just, we really are incredibly fortunate to have, an unpaid consultant sitting next to us most days.
and we agree occasionally.
Occasionally.
Well, see, and that's even the better part, when you actually come to consensus on something. I know it's very interesting for me because I'm very much from the C6 aspect, and my husband's group is a C6, but they're very solidly in the policy community.
Yeah.
So they have a very different view on things, and they still try to use good association management techniques, but they're really not part of like the ASAE community or a GSAE type community because they have the policy community, and that's where they all hang out. And so it's really a little bit different. What I see there that I find really interesting is they seem to be able to build consensus across different viewpoints. He's in a lot of coalitions. And so I think it's a good example of coalition work. And he's actually been on the podcast a few times talking about things. So, and I usually learn stuff on the podcast that he forgets to tell me at dinner, like, oh, I just got appointed to be the officer on the board of some group. I'm like, oh, okay. Didn't even know that. And we live in the same house. But speaking of living in the same house, Owen, so you grew up with two people, very dedicated professionals. Even though Damian didn't start out in association management, he did move into it. So you saw this growing up. So you're in that unique position of actually knowing what this means as you're a young person. So what was that like? Did that motivate you to explore this as a career option? Did you think, let me go into this, it's like the family business, or did you just find it interesting?
So I would say it both did and didn't. So I got a very unique position that I was seeing not only an association, but the association of associations. So I saw, not really the members of each association, but the people running every association. And that has massively shaped my professional career and how I kind of hold myself and the people that were around just as my parents' friends, like Lowell Applebaum, Lori K. Spears, Cynthia Mills, Mr. Abbott Massey. Those were all people that had huge impacts on my life that, even if I hadn't gone into the association world, still would have because of the connection that we had through my mom. And similarly with my dad, I saw a lot of that both in his role as an administrator and teacher. That helped me grow as a professional. And then when he entered the association world, I think I was in high school at that point. So it wasn't quite as large of an impact on me growing up as it was seeing my dad as a teacher. That's still kind of how I think of him as a teacher who has gone into the association world. But it definitely had a large impact, though. Truth be told, it didn't really click for me until college when I was taking a seminar course on jobs with an English degree, and association professional came up there, and it was like, oh, I know that really well. I'm gonna do my project on that. And truth be told, the rest is history, and I've been here ever since.
Oh,
You did a
great.
college project on that?
Yeah, so it was I
Wow.
think it was one of probably my second to last year, maybe. We had a seminar course that was like jobs with an English degree, and it was I know working in a library as an archivist was one of them, working as an association professional was another, and then I believe magazine editor was the third, and I've done two of those at this point, but I don't really want to be an archivist.
And by the way, Cecilia, not only was I an English major, also at the University of Georgia, I also was hired originally in my first association job to be a newsletter editor, and then took on a journal editing role as well. And so
And
the
hold on,
parallels are strong.
let's linger on this. The English department and the classics Latin department are in the same building in Park Hall on the University of Georgia's campus. So all three of us spent a significant amount of our college careers in Park Hall.
So you all were in the same college. Okay, I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Franklin Arts and Sciences.
So I will say not on purpose. I started in engineering at UGA, so I
Not on
took a
purpose.
little bit of a rounder path towards English.
I started as a math major at UGA, so
I was always an English major.
yeah.
I was never an English major, so I majored in political science with a minor in management, and I found political science very helpful with chapter relations.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So because of governance, and so I think that humanities really do set us up to be successful in association management. So that's great to hear that this is holding true for the Kavanagh family here.
Well,
So,
and all three of us are Georgia grads in humanities, and our daughter Owen's sister went to University of Tennessee. She's the orange sheep of the family, and she's got a science degree, an agricultural communications degree, and she's going on to be a lawyer. So go figure.
oh, wow.
Yeah, she
Okay.
did. She was an intern with me at Boma, Georgia, back
Yes.
a few years ago. She was while I was there, she was one of our interns.
And I think she's interned at the GSAE conference before as well as a volunteer.
Oh, and
Yes.
Or
that's
did
a
you
great
you might have even paid her. I'm not sure.
We
It's a
did
great
pay her.
segue into something that Wendy wanted to share, which is how a lot of the interns at the GSAE annual conference, and for those of you who don't know what GSAE is, it is the Georgia Society of Association Executives. We all knew that, but maybe you didn't. So let me put that out there. So it's the Georgia Society, the state group for association executives. So Wendy, you had mentioned as we were prepping for the episode that you have a really strong intern program at GSAE.
And it's really interesting. It's event based. And so we've had interns at our quarterly luncheons in the past, but mostly it's an intern experience that happens at the annual meeting. So the intern, that's a Wednesday through Friday event, usually 200 to 250 attendees. And we would bring in an intern, and for a while they were unpaid, and we were like, we've got to pay these kids. So now they're paid, thankfully. But for the most part, almost, I would say 85% of our interns over that 15, 16-year period were the dependents and children of GSA members and attendees. So occasionally, depending on their age, maybe they'd share a room with their parent, maybe they'd have their own room, but they would run room sets, get to know the speakers, run registration, be the manager of membership and communications right-hand person. Because, as we also talk about being a staff of 2 at GSAE, we needed the extra set of hands. But it was also great because these kids got to see their parents in a different light, and get a sense if they were like Owen and weren't really quite sure what we did. Seeing it on site, up close and in person makes a huge difference. And to me, those professional skills, those soft skills that these kids get a chance to experience and demonstrate, those go way much further beyond whether you become an association management professional. I've got a person that works in the libraries at Georgia Tech. We've got a kid that opened their own company and is an entrepreneur. We've got photographers. We've got folks that went to mortuary school. My favorite right now is our current intern, that came down, is the child of a hospitality professional, is a CNN overnight segment producer. Her team just got nominated for an Emmy, and she took personal time to come down and work the Savannah meeting that just happened, because she enjoys Corinne so much and she enjoys the community so much. So lots of success stories that I really do. I feel like that internship program is beneficial in so many ways.
Well, and I think the interesting part again is the connection between the younger generation and their parents, and bringing them in and showing them what their parents do. As you said, seeing mom and dad in a different light. Oh, this is what you do. Because when I was growing up, my dad was a printer at the big printing companies, and he would take us to show us where he worked. And it was very cool, to see all the different things he did. So, Owen, listening to all these great experiences, do you ever, now that you've been in the association management profession for a while yourself, do you ever disagree with Wendy or Damian?
On some things, though, usually that's more technology related, to be honest, rather than kind of the member relations side, because Mom mentioned earlier soft skills. That was something I saw from my parents day in, day out for my entire life. And it has been a huge, huge boon for me in my career that I had those skills coming in to the industry, because to be honest, especially for people younger like myself, that's just not a skill that they really have that much, because you don't get as much interactions you used to, 10, 20 years ago going through school. So having that soft skills and being taught and modeled that really well by my parents was immensely helpful for myself. And then even on the disagreement side, we'll sometimes disagree with the way we will treat members. So I prefer to take a very, very professional approach, just to kind of separate myself from our membership a bit more than I think my mom would, or maybe my dad would. And that's on purpose. And I think part of that as well is GSE has a very different membership than the Atlanta Apartment Association. And having and understanding that difference kind of leads to where those differences may be, and how we treat our members. And I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong way, as long as you're treating them well. Treating them poorly, that is definitely the wrong way to treat your members. But keeping up some sort of professional boundary, I think, is important for me. And I know Mom may disagree with me on that.
What's kind of interesting, Owen, to hear you say that and articulate that. I know we've had this conversation, but to articulate it is, yeah, we can disagree about that and have an an intellectual tension conversation about that. Whereas, a decade ago, when we are your parents, we might have dictated, no, you should do something different. But now fast forward to you as a professional, and the unbelievable respect that we have for you, your own brand of courageous leadership, I think is something that we've been able to see and watch. I mean, we're super privileged to get to watch it. So maybe one of the cool things about a family affair is that we get to see our kid professionally.
Yeah.
We're not going to see our daughter professionally in the same way. She's going to tell us about the crazy things that lawyers do. You know what they teach you when you're a summer intern at a law firm? They teach you how to bill in 6-minute increments. So come on, we are not like that, and it's just it's a totally different mindset. The good news is she's going to buy our beach house for us, so we're okay with that too.
Well, you hope. I mean, it's
Oh,
funny
that's right.
because when I first got out of college, I worked at 2 different law firms as a legal secretary. So at one firm, I made the mistake of making the suggestion of having one secretary who did all the billing. So guess who got the job? That was
There
me.
you
I
go.
was the billing secretary. So those 6-minute increments. But
Yeah.
the thing I
think
don't like about that is that sometimes they would have a 2-minute phone call, but they bill you for 6 minutes.
Of course they do. You have to.
But
I think,
it's
Cecilia,
6-minute increments.
we're on a theme here that Owen brought up that I think is pretty interesting and somewhat flattering, where he talked about the soft skills, the member relations, the heart for service, the variety of other things. And I know one of the things that we publicly disagreed about is this presentation we got to give together this summer at the GSAE meeting, which was a lot of fun. It was on AI and on a particular study that was done, and Owen suggested that we frame ourselves as an AI optimist, and an AI pessimist or skeptic might have been a better word for it. And I think there was a lot of surprise in the room about what role we held, me as the optimist and him as the pessimist or skeptic. But I think, one of the things that we did in that presentation, Owen, and I think you really drove a lot of this, is to encourage folks to reflect on the things that make us uniquely human, the traits AI can't replicate: empathy, judgment, creativity, leadership under uncertainty, and those skills that really define purpose-driven humans, which I think we probably do agree on. There are unreplicatable things in AI, and while I think we do agree on that. My take on it is, so what? Let's move forward. And Owen says, and you could express this, I think, the same way. Yeah, but let's slow down. Let's pause and think about it. And I got oh, and I think I just shared this with you a couple days ago. I posted something on a post on LinkedIn that I wrote about the whole thing is your mission statement, is your mission AI ready, or is your mission statement AI ready? Kind of a cool question to ask that was posed by someone, a speaker that I heard. And Owen, you are featured in my article. If you haven't read it yet, just a little blurb just to mention that we got to. It's a highlight of my career so far to have been able to co-present with my kid. That was awesome. I mean,
And I will
really
say
cool.
it was a privilege to have the opportunity to present with my dad. I don't think a lot of people get to say that, especially when, it was very professional setting. It was very and we disagreed. We essentially got to argue with each other as a presentation, and it was really fun. It was very enjoyable.
And I think we need to credit Wendy with this, because you were over at dinner one night, and as she was still at GSA and planning the conference, like, I got a 30-minute hole here, and this AI article just came out. Do you guys want to do this? We're like, yes, we do.
And
Uh,
you may not recall, I actually wrote some of the questions for that and helped them figure those
the
out,
AI
which is
article
well.
itself? Oh, I
Yeah,
forgot
so
about
the
that. Yeah,
initial the survey they did, they reached out, GSA and my
yeah.
mom reached out to me for a little bit of assistance with some of the questions, just to frame them a little bit better to really hone in on what we wanted from the survey.
Yeah. Talk about full circle.
Yeah.
So even to give a little more background, it was an AI and association usage survey that ASA, the membership group for the folks who are execs of SAEs across the country, and Jim Anderson from Cal SAE said, "Hey, I'm swamped. Can anybody help do some beta testing on this and help us correct anything that's a misnomer?" And yes, so I said, "Hey, that's right up my kid's alley. Let me see if he has some time to give." And so, yes, California to my kid to a thing that went out. And gosh, I think they ended up with over 250 responses. And several of us co-sponsored it and put it out to our membership. So, use what resources you have at hand.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this sounds like a lot of fun because most of us do not get to do the same work our parents did. Like I mentioned, my dad worked in big printing companies and my mom worked at the Marriage License Bureau in St. Louis. So we did not get to work together, although we would also get drafted to be volunteers. We were really being voluntold by our parents in the neighborhood where I grew up because we're all very active at our church and our neighborhood
Yes.
organization. So that's where I got that flavor for service and volunteering and then ultimately working in this career from my own parents, even though they didn't do it as professionally. So I do think we get that influence. I'm sitting here listening to all these great stories, though. You're all working together. You got to present together at GSAE. Owen got asked to help with the survey. Do you ever feel your daughter feels left out?
No, we asked her. We asked her if she wanted to jump on this podcast. She said absolutely not.
Okay. All right.
And again, as Owen mentioned, KK did intern for another association. She interned for GSAE, but she has also been my go-to crafty person. Again, as you said, I was nodding my head when you were talking about getting voluntold to help your parents with something. I certainly went through it because my mother was the consummate volunteer. Everything from Habitat for Humanity to elections to PTA, that she was always doing something. And we were usually getting dragged right along beside her. You need to help us at the bake sale. So KK certainly has gotten it and still gets it. She may or may not have been helping a little bit with badge stuffing recently.
I think that's a great point. That's even more intergenerational than just the one generation we're talking about here. That Wendy's mom and and what she did, and her dad was a CEO. So I've talked about this with my siblings, Owen's uncles and aunts on my side. I'm one of six, and five of us are CEOs. And that's pretty unusual that we share that in common, and we've thought together collectively, we've sort of brainstormed a little bit. Where did that come from? And that entrepreneurial spirit is probably mostly due to our father, and the heart for service is probably mostly from our mother. Although I don't know, they're kind of intertwined with each other, and so it's hard to pinpoint it exactly. But and the same in Wendy's family, and her siblings are very accomplished as well. So I think there's more intergenerational that we're not fully tapping into here that can go back at least one more generation, and maybe we could push our folks to push it beyond that as well.
Yeah, that could be. That's very interesting though, because I am one of seven and none of us did the same career. We're all very helpful people. We try to be involved in our community, but none of us have done the same thing.
Well, and we're not, and none of us are in the same career either. But what we share is a common approach to our leadership, and a common beliefs in what we think is important in people and how we relate to people. That I think that transcends whatever industry we happen to be in. Three are in for-profit businesses that they're running their own companies. I'm in nonprofit, and the others in a for-profit retail setting. So but our leadership styles and are very, very similar. And to my brothers, if you talk to us on the phone, you can't tell us apart on the phone. And Owen, I think, is kind of like that as well. That our four voices are indistinguishable if you don't know who you're talking to.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've had that with a couple of my two sisters that are closer in age, and and I keep forgetting there's really only six of us now because my one sister passed away, but I still, she's still in the family even though she's not here. But we have that in common as far as like the kind of jobs we have. They're all kind of people oriented jobs. So there's that, but not in the same area whatsoever. And
That's
we're
funny.
not all CEOs, I can tell you that. But that's interesting. So Wendy, what is in common with your siblings that, Damian mentioned?
Again, I think that approach, the work ethic,
Mhm.
showing up, getting being really interested in professional development, staying on top of your career, and the changes in your career. One of my brothers is a computer engineer, the other is a mechanical engineer, and then you have me, the English major. But I do think that commitment to continuous learning is really apparent in the three of us, and absolutely there's a direct line to that from my parents, strong belief in the value of education, strong belief in community service. Both my brothers have coached things and been very involved in either their children's or their grandchildren's lives. And so I do think that again, modeling the behavior you want to see in whoever's around you is just really powerful.
Yeah. And it's really, and I think if we all look back, we see that not just our parents, but our older brothers and sisters. I'm on the tail end of the family. So I watched all the older kids and what they were doing, and also said, ooh, don't do that. Because we learned what not to do too from watching them.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure there's a
it's,
lot we could talk about birth order. I'm a middle,
yeah.
Wendy's youngest, Owen's oldest. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's well, birth order is definitely a thing. I think like looking at some of the older kids in my family and how they behave and like our middle sibling, one of my sisters is a middle child. She is a very much the mediator, peacemaker type, which is very typical. So but that's what she does. She doesn't want us all fighting. So
Yeah.
she's like, everybody calm down, and that's good. So do you need that person, especially, you're all from families with strong personalities. I'm from a family of people with strong personalities, so it's really, but the influence of that though on what we do today in our careers is really impactful, I think, because I did, as I mentioned, learn a lot about volunteering and contributing, being part of things from my parents, just stepping up and helping if you can, because it's what you should do. That's what good neighbors do and good community members do. So, Owen, I'm gonna, as we get near to the end of the episode and wrapping this up, I'm gonna ask you this question, and if you don't have an answer, that's okay. Would you recommend this career if you had children? Would you say to your kids, "Hey, maybe you should do what Grandma and Grandpa do"?
I think I would, and a big part of that is both the connections I've been very fortunate to an extent inherit. I would love to be able to pass those on to my own children, and similarly, I think it's just a great industry to be a part of. For me, a big part of going back into an association was I really missed working with members. I really missed being that touch point they had with the association that made their day just a little bit brighter. And that's not something that you really get in a lot of other, especially in a for-profit setting where you're the best thing that happened to that person that day. That's not necessarily the case if you're a lawyer or if you are in a retail setting. It could be a trial for that person, even. And I really enjoy the work I do, and I would absolutely recommend it to my own children or really anyone else's children because it is a fun and rewarding career that you get to wear a lot of hats in.
You do. Here. Well said. So, let's, as you all know, because you've been on before, I like to ask everybody for a closing thought, and it can be about anything from the conversation that you'd like to share. So we're going to start with Damian since he was the most recent guest on the podcast. And what might your closing thought be for us today?
So a closing thought that actually plays off of what Owen just said, which is also really an incredible statement. A couple things. Number one, we don't have grandchildren yet. Looking at you, Owen, and we're not sure. Cecilia, just so you know, it's a Southern thing. We're not sure Grandma and Grandpa are going to be our grandparent names.
Okay.
So we've also talked about that. We've also dreamt about that a little bit. But I wonder, as a family, I mean, I wrote this note down earlier. As a family that does this, and with a lawyer in the family too, why don't we form an AMC? management
Why not?
company. I think our real difficulty would be trying to decide who would be the director, the executive director. Although I think we all know it would be Wendy.
It'd be
Yeah,
mom.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think we all know who it would be. That person who who is a who I would say is the linchpin, is the real inspiration. So I mean, I gave credit at the beginning, and I think I'll give credit at the end as a closing thought that's and not just for us, as we watched Wendy move on from GSAE into the what she's doing now with NPFDA, as we got to celebrate her with the GSAE community on 20 amazing years. I mean, it's really clear that we've been fortunate and privileged that we got to see it up close and personal. But we have all the respect in the world for all of the members with whom we feel like we have shared her, or maybe the members have shared her with us. I'm really not sure which, but there's some truth there to that was really a remarkable send off and celebration of all things Wendy.
Oh, what a great closing thought. Thank you, Damian. All right. So Wendy, after that, if you're not tearing up after that lovely statement, what is the thought you'd like to share?
I think what strikes me about talking with this and the intergenerational is any parent or guardian, what are you modeling to your dependents, to your kids? What are you modeling as far as community service goes, civic mindedness goes? The things that we've talked about today are not unique to association management or children growing up with those kind of professionals. I think anything that is people first, service first. Yeah, I think as just human beings, we should always be focused on what behavior are we modeling that we want to see in others. And I do feel it is such a privilege. I've had annual meetings in the past where everyone was present. At GSAE meetings, everyone was present, all four of us. And there's something deeply satisfying and special about that. But also knowing that we gave them the tools and the skills to be successful at whatever they chose to do. So I think that's a takeaway.
Oh, that's another great comment. Thank you. And I agree with that. As you all know, I teach an ethics course, and that's one of the things we talk about. Model the behavior you want to see. So another reinforcement. Thank you, Wendy. And then Owen, you've already shared a wonderful thought, but would there be anything else you would like to share before we wrap up?
Absolutely. So as the child of two amazing professionals in the association industry, I think to all the parents out there that this is really a great thing to grow into, the association industry itself. And another piece of that is as you see your child grow into this career, if they choose it, there will come a time where they surprise you, either in what they're able to do or what they're able to accomplish, or in that they disagree with you. And you may even find that they are right. And having that realization can be a really special moment. And I've seen it with both my parents, and I have also seen it on my end, where I have disagreed with them and they were frankly right. And I was thankful to be able to rely on their experience for that. So it's absolutely a great career to get into, and I highly recommend it to any Gen Z listeners on the call.
Well, that's a great endorsement for the profession that we have all dedicated our careers to. So thank you for that, Owen. Now, we have to go rogue for now, but I do usually ask my guests, how can people get in touch with them? But just for ease of wrapping up, you can find each and every one of these wonderful people on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to connect with them, send them a message on LinkedIn, send them a connection request. I have gotten to know all of them over the last few years. This is a great group of professionals and a wonderful family. So thank you all, Kavanaghs, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia.
Thank you.
So we have to go rogue for now, as I said, but we'll be back next time with another exciting episode. So again, don't forget to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss any of these kind of wonderful conversations about what we do. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out the website, roguetulips.com. You can also find this podcast episode to share with your friends and colleagues on our podcast page, and you can catch up on all the other great episodes we've been doing the last few years. If you'd like to learn more about CAE and how you can earn that designation, or you want to pick up an ethics credit, check out our education page. We're working on the fall schedule as we speak. And if you'd like to know what's on my mind this week, because you never know what the heck I'm going to say, check out the blog page and get caught up on that. So on behalf of Wendy, Damian, Owen, and myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. That's it for this week. I hope you really loved this episode as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Learn more about how our experience and knowledge at Rogue Tulips can give your organization the strategic edge to reach its goals. Check out our website at roguetulips.com. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can work together. Thanks.